Speaking of ugly old men.
It's a great transition.
Thank you. Bobby Hull. Bubby. Hey, Bubby. Bobby Hull passed away this week, and this is a conversation you and I have had before, but more frequently on the music realm. How do you remember someone who is a legend in what they do, but turns out to be not a very good person? And this is what faces the Chicago Blackhawks right now, who we all know handle all of these situations very well. Bobby Hull, for those who don't know, on top of all his fantastic accomplishments in hockey, accused by multiple ex-wives. Power to you if you have multiple ex-wives. And accused by more than one of them of being a domestic abuser. Also quoted in a Moscow newspaper in the late 90s as having said, Hitler had some good ideas. Just went a little too far. Like, easy, Bobby.
Yeah.
And said that, some of what Hitler was proposing might have curtailed, the increasing black population in the United States at the time. So Bobby Hull, pretty clearly a very good hockey player. Maybe not a very good person.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark Lazarus has a terrific piece in The Athletic right now. We'll link to it in the show notes. I'd encourage you to check that out, about what do the Hawks do right now? Because the Hawks are the last team right now that wants this sort of attention on them as they try and rebuild their own legacy. But
he's
what
a
do you
Hawks
do?
legend, though, not just like a former Hawk.
No, this is a guy who made his name with the Chicago Blackhawks before moving on to the WHA and the Winnipeg Jets, becoming the first ever $1 million athlete in or $1 million hockey player in North America. And so, like I said, we've talked about this with Michael Jackson, right? What do you feel? What do you think when you hear his songs versus should I even be lit? Like it puts fans in a tough spot. And right now, it's putting the NHL and the Blackhawks in a tough spot. Do you think, first of all, under normal circumstances, with an all-star game happening this weekend, that there would, under normal circumstances, be an acknowledgement, a ceremony, and then on top of that, do you think, since this isn't normal circumstances, will there be one at the all-star game?
And it is in Florida.
It is in Florida.
Florida man beats raccoon to a death with a hammer, right? That kind of thing, right? Like,
sure,
things just are go there, right?
Things are pedal down in Florida.
Yeah. Like so what flies in Columbus isn't the same as what flies in Florida.
Right.
So I think it gets mentioned. For sure, I do. See, and he was also not that this can takes any of the pressure off the rest of the things he's done and said, but also a notorious enjoyer of a cocktail or two. And I don't
like to throw stones from that position.
Yeah, you've never endorsed Hitler or beat your wife.
It's true.
That's very true, Matt. No. And I shouldn't.
But I enjoy a cocktail or two.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But
so I kind of think the NHL is going to pass the buck here. I kind of think Bobby Hull doesn't get mentioned at the All-Star game. I think it's easy enough with Fall Out Boy is going to be there.
Okay.
Green Day is not available, so here's other Green Day making, the musical performance. We can do, I'm sure there'll be a celebrity doing national anthems. We'll have other things going on. I think the NHL is going to skate on this and pass the buck to the Blackhawks, who I believe their next home game is February 7th. And, I'm sure right now they're wrestling with, are we better off to have the bye week right now?
Right.
Where we can figure out what to do with this?
Or do nothing, let it go.
Right. Or holy shit, we'd rather play a home game tomorrow and just get this over with. It's going to be tough because there's no winning in this situation for the Blackhawks.
Does his jersey still hang from the rafters?
I believe so, but they did remove him last year from being a team ambassador when they were trying to everything around Kyle Beach
clean
and
up a
everything.
bunch of that.
They removed him as an ambassador or did not renew his contract. They left his statue up, not wanting to make we've been talking about more important statues than that being torn down or left up. I don't think they wanted that story at the time. But they did decide we're going to part ways as an organization with you at this point. And so I think at this point, you're almost in a no-win situation if you're the Blackhawks. There's going to be one side. I happen to think, and it would be my belief, there will be a moment of silence before the next home game. There'll be a little video package of everything he did on the ice, and then you just carry on. No words. You don't ask your players to say things about him. Reporters can ask, but the organization doesn't have to. You drop the puck, and you carry on. But you're staring down one side that's going to say, you just celebrated a wife-beating Nazi sympathizer, and that's hard. That's a hard argument to win.
That is, and what do you do?
And another side that says, "Oh, your woke ass is tap dancing on his grave," and bullshit like that. It's going to be very difficult for the Blackhawks.
But the reality is, for a guy who has scored as many goals as he has, it's very quiet on that front. Period. Right?
Yeah.
He is not one of those guys that gets celebrated anywhere. It's very quiet on the Bobby Hull front.
Right.
And it has been for a couple decades.
Yeah.
Really. And so
as this stuff all started to trickle out, people wanted less and less to do with
Yeah. They care a lot less about how well you can shoot the puck, right? When you say those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But it's interesting when you look at that's a guy who between the WHA and the NHL scored almost over 900 goals in 500 fewer games than Gordie Howe.
Right.
Like Howe had about 50 more goals, but he did it in almost 600 more games.
Well, like people forget, we just back in September did that 50th anniversary of the 1972 series, right? Canada-Russia.
Yeah, no Bobby Hull.
No Bobby Hull. And what that might have meant. No, who knows?
They may have won if they had him.
Sure.
Oh, wait.
Bobby Orr, Bobby Hull. A couple of big names. No, you're right. But that's a big name at the time that's off in the and I think like 2 years later, 1 year later, the WHA did their own, series with the Soviets.
Yeah.
And it didn't go very well.
No, it's less publicized.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is just one of those things that we're going to be fighting with for a while now that gets thrown into that pile with the culture wars, right? That you're either too woke to celebrate this guy or too insensitive to acknowledge what he's done. And yeah, like I said, I mentioned that line from Mark Lazarus there a little while ago. A great hockey player died, a great man did not. And
right.
You're entitled to your own opinion on that, but I'll be fascinated to see how this plays out. I would be shocked if they don't do something, but it doesn't have to be much. Please stay in a moment of silence. Here's the video package, and we're carrying on. Right? That's sort of the way I expect this to play out.
And we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, to me,
neither one of us remembers to watch a Blackhawks game on February 7th.
Yeah. Well, since they now have them on cable TV, unlike the old days.
Right. And that was interesting thus far. The only two things that the and at this point, there's nothing else they could have done. The organization put out an unsigned, a very successful member of our organization, made his name with the Blackhawks, this and this. And then Rocky Wirtz put out this beloved Blackhawks legend. You're like, okay, I can see we're on two different pages here in terms of the person versus the organization.
The Wirtz family always known for sensitivity and understanding.
For sure.